Welcome to Business Reporter. I'm Louise People, and today I'm joined by Peter Leith, Vice President of Product Strategy at Just Enough. Morning, Peter.
Morning.
Let's say I'm a retail organisation. I know my business, I know my suppliers, I know my customers. Why would I need to change my practice?
That's a good question. At the end of the day, you don't need to change if you don't want to, but the market is going to force you to change. The retail environment is evolving dramatically. The presence of the omni-channel world is not just a nice to have anymore. Being omnipresent to your customer is a requirement to survive and to succeed in today's very competitive market. And add to that the consumer. The consumer is much more demanding and unpredictable. They have constant access to mobile devices, which means they have unlimited information about not only your products but your competitors' products. But there are also great opportunities if a retailer is willing to embrace omnichannel. They have the ability to get much more loyal customers, they get closer to their customers, and at the end of the day, they can improve their bottom line through adopting new processes.
Now, you mentioned omnichannel, omnipresent being crucial to survive. Can you give us some more examples?
Yeah, so let's imagine a customer. She's sitting at home on her laptop browsing your product catalog. Or actually better yet, imagine she's sitting in a tube with her cell phone in front of her looking at that same catalog. She has the opportunity to buy that product on her phone, and when she gets out of the tube, go down to your store and pick it up. Now imagine if she goes into that store and that product isn't available. She's immediately on her phone, she's looking at all of your competitors' websites, and she's looking for that same product. So you have a very small window of opportunity to satisfy that customer by bringing stock, either shipping it to her home, to her business, from one of your multiple channels. Otherwise you'll lose that customer. And if you lose that customer, you could be losing many other customers. Never forget that that customer is probably also on their social media profile telling the world that you don't have any stock in your stores.
Aside from social media, what are the other impacts this could have?
Well, social media is obviously a very important one with the brand image in today's market. But one of the ways that retailers are mistakenly trying to solve this is by increasing the amount of inventory that they carry to satisfy all of these customers in these channels.
Risky.
And that's obviously increasing costs, and as a result, it's affecting margin.
Why are retailers getting themselves in this situation?
Well, there are a number of reasons, and I'll give you an example of a large retailer that we've worked with to help them get through this problem. They started off with your traditional brick and mortar selling on the high street, and as they grew, to satisfy their customers, they opened an online channel. They had their catalogs, they had a mobile channel that they developed. They then started selling through partners, and they grew internationally. Every single time they built one of these channels, they created a silo. And in that silo, they had their own planning process, and importantly, they had this pot of inventory. Now, as they grew over the years, this pot grew and grew and grew with them, and eventually they had to mark down a whole bunch of stock, and that really had a big impact on their margins. So they get themselves into these problems, and it grows and grows and grows, and eventually they have to do or take a major change or shift in direction to solve that.
So in one way you're saying that omni-channel can be a burden, but in another way you're saying it's a solution. Can you drill down a little bit more in this?
Yeah, there are a lot of opportunities, I would say. I would focus on the opportunities because there has to be a reason for a retailer to change. It's not the negative side, it's really the positives of it. One of the major positives is that you get a lot closer to your customer. Because you're communicating with them across these multiple channels, you can build a much more loyal customer. In addition to that, you have the omnipresent environment. You're always in front of that customer, and as a result of that, you've got greater opportunity to sell to them. The other thing that I think is really important is the ability to develop deeper consumer insights. Because you're interacting with these customers across these channels, you can start to tell which products they're happy to order straight online, or which products they actually want to interact with, which affects your assortments. And in the whole click and collect world, it's also very important to understand your customer, because in that case, you have a guaranteed customer coming into your store that wants your product. So what are your opportunities to upsell that customer and get greater returns on that customer coming into your store?
It sounds great in theory, Peter, but in practice, how would a retailer take these steps?
Yeah, it is a challenge, but there are four main steps that a retailer has to consider, and those are process, people, the data, and the systems to support it. And I'll go back to that retailer I was talking about a little bit earlier. They did this very successfully. First of all, they redefined their processes. They broke down the wall between their silos, and they built a process around planning everything as one common stock pool, one common planning process. The next step is they introduced the people. Now you have to restructure your people to fit into those processes more appropriately, and you have to incentivize them differently. If you think about a traditional storekeeper, they get measured on how much they're selling out of the door. But now all of the stock is flowing out of the door because it was ordered online, and they're not getting credited for those sales. So you have to incentivize them differently. Added to that, you've got the data challenge. You have to have very, very accurate data. And our client was able to rectify that, be very precise about where their inventory was sitting, and more importantly, if a sale was coming from the website or mobile or anywhere else, they knew where the sale was coming from and where it was satisfied from. So they could then position their stock in a much better way. And finally, it's about a system, because a system will bring all of that together. And you can't just consider one of those, you have to consider them all. Because I can't introduce a system without a process, or I can't introduce a system without data. And I can't put a process in if my legacy systems don't support it. So it's really about process, people, data, and the system to bring it all together.
Now, what do you bring to the table? How does Just Enough work?
Yeah, Just Enough can help in a number of ways. I think most importantly, we offer a modern, flexible software solution that was built from the ground up to support omni-channel. It was built by industry experts and in collaboration with leading retailers around the world. So the software element is obviously a big player. More importantly than that, however, it's about introducing our industry experts to help our retail customers develop the best practice processes that the system is then going to support. And we've been very successful at bringing that industry expertise and software together to make our customers successful.
And how long does this process take?
It can vary. Some of our customers are able to get returns on their investment in a matter of weeks or months. But your time to benefit really depends on the complexity of the problem that the retailer is facing. And additional to that is the willingness to adapt to the changes that they're going to make in their processes and their systems, and accepting those from a user's perspective. So that time can obviously take, it doesn't depend on the software or anything else, it's the business and the culture and the organization that has to change with the systems that they're introducing.
Now, talking of change, we've seen huge changes with social media and omni-channels. Can you tell me what would happen if we work with Just Enough? How can you guarantee that this will work in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years?
Yeah, it's guaranteed. The industry is constantly changing because it's being driven by the consumer. And the consumer is constantly more needy and more unpredictable. They are always on social media, for instance, being driven by some superstar who's wearing something. Suddenly that is the big craze. And the key aspect of all of this is that the organization needs to put in place a system and a process that is flexible to those market forces. And Just Enough is constantly working with those leading retailers to envisage the future, so that we're not just providing for now, but we're building for the future, and we're predicting what is going to take place.
It sounds like a really exciting future ahead.
Absolutely.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.